you I'll tell how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call in the second half of the program. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can leave us a voicemail at any time, and we might respond to it on the next program. If you'd like to leave us a written message, you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm/contact, or you can hang out with us on our Facebook and YouTube chat. We've got a great show lined up for you today, so really excited to get into it. Soon we're going to be talking to a campus worker at Jacksonville State about how their union continues to rack up wins. We're also going to be talking to Will Tucker, the Southern Program Director for Jobs to Move America, about their Recall Injustice campaign targeting Hyundai-Kia, trying to get them to negotiate a community benefits agreement with Alabama and Georgia communities. Exciting stuff there. And lots more. So hang out with us in the chat if you'd like to participate in the program. Appreciate everybody already in the YouTube chat. Quirky Geek Girl says, it's happened in Canada a lot. Conservatives all branch out to small parties, then realize the only way to win is to combine all the parties together, and it's always the worst of the bunch in control. A couple of other comments about our title on the YouTube stream. The title of our YouTube stream this week is It Time to Abandon the Democrats? This report says so. In the second half of the program, we're going to be talking to the authors of a new report that indicates that in key swing states, running as a Democrat rather than as an independent actually hurts you by a significant margin. The report is titled Democrats' Rust Belt Struggles and the Promise of Independent Politics. We're talking to the authors Jared Abbott and Les Leopold about that, again, in the second half of the program. As Quirky Geek Girl in the YouTube chat suggests, people who even have kind of minimal political priorities in alignment, splitting up and creating smaller parties makes it, in many cases, more likely that the further party from you will be able to secure power. And so I have always been skeptical of, generally speaking, of third-party and independent political campaigns in the United States. I think there are some unique situations where they may be, more viable than running as one of the two major parties. But in general, I'm pretty skeptical of it. The report's really interesting. They've got a lot of good data here. So looking forward to talking to them about that. Stewards Resource Center says solidarity from the Great Plains. Appreciate you tuning in. So let's get to our first segment today. Alabama Power has announced that they are going to freeze rates for 2 years. This is going to come as a huge relief to many Alabama families who do not get their power from the Tennessee Valley Authority. We get our power from the Tennessee Valley Authority. For the folks listening to me in Huntsville and Muscle Shoals and online across northern Alabama, we get our power from the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is owned by the federal government, and which, even though it has not gotten any tax subsidies from the government in 50 years, even though that is the case, it continues to provide some of the cheapest and most reliable energy in the United States. I mean, people in North Alabama, people across Tennessee, and in portions of Georgia and Kentucky and Mississippi, we are so fortunate to be getting our power through the public power model of the TVA. Up here in North Alabama, our utility rates are something like 30 to 40% less than Alabamians' utility rates who get their power from Alabama Power. And the question that comes as a result of hearing that statistic, a lot of people will think, well, why is that? And the reason is because the TVA, because it is owned in the final sense by the people, because it is owned by the people of the Tennessee Valley, it does not have shareholders that the TVA has to pay dividends to or, make happy. The thing that the TVA has to do is to make happy the residents of the Valley. It has to provide cheap and reliable energy, and it has been able to do that for nearly 100 years, and it's been able to do that for nearly 100 years while providing good paying, safe, reliable, consistent union jobs. The unionization rate at the Tennessee Valley Authority is something like 70 to 80%. It is, and their compensation rates are higher, obviously, than non-union utility workers. And so, just all around, everything about the TVA is better than private utilities. And so, people outside of northern Alabama get their power from Alabama Power. Again, their rates are 30 to 40% higher than the utility rates for people in North Alabama, for people in Tennessee. And so Alabama Power announcing a 2-year rate freeze is welcome news, no doubt, to people who get their power from Alabama Power. But there's a catch. Energy Alabama, a clean energy nonprofit, says that potentially Alabama Power could end up charging interest on the deferred balance. And so that would not be good news for Alabama Power customers. And so what Energy Alabama is calling on the Public Service Commission, because the Public Service Commission is charged with regulating the state's utility company, rather than just simply accepting Alabama Power's proposal. What Energy Alabama is proposing the Public Service Commission do is require immediate bill credits and refunds, actually lower utility rates, which, as I said, seems like it must be possible because somehow the TVA is able to do it for 30 to 40% cheaper than Alabama Power, so there must be a way to do it. So Energy Alabama is calling for lower utility rates immediately and to finally hold a full public rate case in 2026, which would be the first in over 40 years. And I want to explain that for you, because you would think that since Alabama Power is a monopoly, people in most of the state are required. They have to get their utilities from Alabama Power. And so that's why the Public Service Commission is set up, because look, it doesn't make sense. Competition among utility companies doesn't make sense. You having multiple water lines go to your house so you can pick this or that company. The infrastructure is too capital intensive. And so you have to either have a private monopoly or a public monopoly. The TVA is a public monopoly. Alabama Power is a private monopoly. So when you have a private monopoly, you must have some sort of regulator. But the Public Service Commission, the candidates who have been elected to the Public Service Commission for, the last 40 years have almost all had their campaigns almost totally funded by Alabama Power. And so they have given Alabama Power, basically a total pass to kind of do whatever they want with respect to the rates. And so there has not been a full public rate case since 1982, I believe, is when that happened. And so we have never, forced Alabama Power as a state to open their books and see what they're spending all of their money on. How much money does Alabama Power spend on public relations campaigns? How much money does Alabama Power spend on lobbying? How much, does all of these questions have not been answered. And so, it seems like it would be a good idea for the first time in 20 years to actually have a full public rate case and lay out everything and make Alabama Power justify any future rate increase or even the rates that they're currently paying, that they're currently the rates that they are currently charging. So that's what Energy Alabama is calling for. So even though, the rate freeze itself is no doubt welcome, Energy Alabama is calling attention to the fact that, there could be a little bit more to the story here. And, there's even more money on the table for the residents of Alabama Power, right? I mean, if a company comes to you and delivers something to you without any prompting at all, then there's more money that you can get by pushing them a little further. So that's an interesting story. And another interesting part of this is that the lieutenant governor of the state of Alabama has come out with an op-ed in AL.com saying, before you quote left-wing Energy Alabama again, read the fine print. And so he basically talks about how, Energy Alabama is a left-wing entity without actually addressing any of the arguments of Alabama Power, of Energy Alabama, I mean. Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth does not make an argument for why Alabama Power should be given carte blanche to set the rates as they see fit without having to justify it before the public and in front of the Public Service Commission in front of the public. Like, make the case. If that's what you're arguing for by arguing against Energy Alabama, so make the case, right? Make the case that Alabama Power should not be required to lower utility bills. Go through that. Go through that case for us instead of doing these ad hominem attacks against a nonprofit organization. And that really is the extent of it. There is no argument from Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth responsive to the critiques from Energy Alabama. And so, you should you should really be hesitant to take it too seriously. So yeah, there you go. That's the it's just a really, really frustrating set of events there. But yeah, if you have anything to add, we do have our chat open in Facebook and YouTube, The Valley Labor Report. You can hang out with us there. We will take calls in the second half of the program. Appreciate everybody tuning in to us. Union Gus says, good morning and solidarity forever. Another chatter says, I live in a rural area of a Rust Belt state. No one here trusts either party, but they begrudgingly work with or through them because of how the electoral system is. Yeah, that's kind of, that kind of is the thing that makes the most sense to me, generally speaking.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is really tough when you start talking about third parties or independent runs. Is the ballot access, right? Because we have a two-party monopoly. Mm-hmm. Speaking of monopolies, Republicans and Democrats have a monopoly on the electoral system. And some states are a little better than others, obviously. There's more room for other, alternatives in other states. Down in the South, it's particularly tough. A lot of our ballot access laws are really restrictive. It's not impossible. And I think there are more and more people considering it, so I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have in overtime today, because there are more folks looking, even in Alabama and places in the South, and looking at ways to get on the ballot without necessarily going through one of the major parties. In our case, in Alabama, it takes a fair amount of signatures. You have to get a certain percentage of the last election. Basically, they look at the last governor election in the state, and you have to get a certain percentage of those voters in the district you're running in to sign a petition to get you on the ballot. But, if you can do that, if you have the campaign and you're able to generate those signatures, you might just have enough support to really pull off a campaign and build something from there. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing that conversation this afternoon.
RD Cherry in the YouTube chat says, solidarity from a Detroit Teamster steward. There's a ballot initiative proposal in the petition phase right now that would ban our utility companies from making political campaign donations. It's called Michiganders for Money Out of Politics, if you'd like to read more. I mean, that sounds like a good That sounds like a good petition to me, generally speaking. You know, we were talking about right to work last week and how one of the arguments for right to work from conservative politicians is that, workers should not be required to fund the political campaigns of unions. And, of course, if you listen to this program, you know that unions cannot actually donate their dues to political campaigns. They can use it for lobbying and representational efforts in so far as, unions can communicate to their politicians, our members do not support this policy, or our members want you to raise the minimum wage, or something like that, right? You can use dues money for that, but you can't use dues money for actual political campaign spending, even though people who are supportive of right to work want you to think that. And yet, people who support right to work laws are totally fine with your coerced utility bill, some of that going to literally going straight into political campaigns, right? People who live outside of northern Alabama, who live inside of the Alabama Power Service area, they have no choice but to get their utilities from Alabama Power. And then Alabama Power is free to do with the money that they get from consumers as they will, including using that on explicit political spending, like donating directly to candidates. That seems bad, especially if you are a supporter of quote unquote right to work laws. If you support right to work laws for the quote unquote freedom of speech aspect of it, you would think that the consistent thing to do there would be to ensure that the bills that you pay to your utility company cannot be used for political spending. But actually, people who support right to work laws, by and large, do not support it because they're some free speech absolutists. They support it because they want to decrease worker power. I believe we've got our guest on the Zoom. Our guest is Lance Ingwersen. Really excited for this conversation. Lance is a member of the United Campus Workers at Jacksonville State University. Lance, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Thanks, Jacob. It's great to be back on. Thanks for you and Adam for inviting me back.
Excited to have you. Can you remind us a little bit about United Campus Workers and the style of unionism that UCW uses, and what you've already won at Jacksonville State University?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So United Campus Workers, UCW, is part of the umbrella or underneath the umbrella of Communications Workers of America. So we're Local 3821. We reorganized, so we are now a regional local. We used to be state-based, and we have approximately 5,000 members across 8 states, largely across the South. And so that's our that's our model. We are a wall-to-wall union in the public sector. So the wall-to-wall meaning that we have workers of all classifications that are part of it. If you're familiar with higher education, labor organizations in different areas, often in places like California, where we have higher union densities, we've got union locals for professors, we have union locals for grad student workers, we have, and so we are wall to wall. So we bring everybody together, whether they be student workers, whether they be staff or faculty, part-time, full-time. And so, yeah, so that's us. That's United Campus Workers, and being a part of the public sector, it means that we're a pre-majority union. So for some of your listeners and viewers, it's quite different from being in a union in the private sector. We have lower thresholds to start the unions, but it also means that we don't have things like collective bargaining. We don't have the right to strike. So we are also a bit more limited in the tools that we have to be able to achieve some of the wins that we have.
And one of the things that you have been able to win already is a raise for Jacksonville State workers. Isn't that right?
We did. So we launched publicly in 2023. In 2024, we saw a mid-fiscal year. They called it a retention pay supplement. It was a one-time. It was really kind of a bonus more than it was a wage, which saw increases anywhere from $500 to $1,800. So the higher amounts went to the folks that made less. And then in the fall, we did see raises. They weren't the raises that obviously we want to see. So we're still a ways away from where we want to be. But a good number of both faculty and staff ended up getting seeing adjustments to their base pay. So those were salary adjustments. And so we're definitely working towards trying to get where we want the university to be, but we're still a ways away from a living wage for all campus workers.
And can you tell us a little bit about how this model of unionism works? What are the mechanisms that you have to push the university to do what the workers want, since you don't, quote unquote, have a right to collective bargaining? You don't have a union contract. You don't have a mechanism for an election. You don't have a mechanism to force the university to even recognize you. So how are you able to push Jacksonville State and other universities across the state and across the South to move towards your positions?
So we have to, what we do, a large part of what we do is called pressure organizing. So we gather people together, we try to find issues or individuals that we think that we can leverage for specific asks and specific types of wins. And so often what that means is putting out press releases, trying to circulate information on social media, other sort of avenues, coming on shows like this, to talk to people a little bit more about what is going on at the universities. A lot of it is really about raising greater awareness. I think a lot of people think that, you work at a university, life's great, you've got all these great benefits, it's a great job, that kind of stuff. And then when we tell them, how much workers make, they're really shocked. I mean, I occasionally will have this conversation, not during class, but, like in the course of a conversation I have with students. And they will be astonished to find out that as someone with a terminal degree in my field, so I have a doctorate, that I make less than I would if I were teaching at a public school or teaching at a community college here in Alabama.
Wow. I mean, that is surprising, and so incredibly important for workers at Jacksonville State to be able to come together and put pressure on the university to get those things to change, because that does not seem like a good or sustainable, frankly, set of affairs. I mean, the way to attract and retain talent and give students at Jacksonville State the best experience possible, the best education possible, is to make sure that the working conditions of the teachers are actually good, and that they can actually focus on teaching rather than worrying about, am I going to be able to pay my utility bill, for instance, since we were just talking about that.
So this is a big challenge. I mean, students are often horrified to find out how much some of the staff members make. I mean, we have folks in maintenance, we have folks in building services, housekeepers, and I mean, their wages are just terribly low, right? Unethically low. The university knows that, we know that, and the more that we can spread word about that, right? And we often say, that our working conditions, right, are students' sort of educational conditions. So that if we're not treating the people that work here correct, and we're not treating them ethically, and we're not paying them a living wage, that's going to have a downstream effect on the students, right? And the students are the heart of the university, right? That's why we exist. We exist to provide opportunities for students and their families to be able to often, sort of improve their position generationally, right? So we have about a quarter of our students are first generation students, and so that means that they will be the first in their families to graduate from college. And the idea is that will give them and provide them opportunities that their parents and their grandparents didn't have.
And so one of the automatic questions specific to Jacksonville State University that a person might have in their head when they hear things about how the staff is paid really low is, does the university have the money to pay them more? Does the university have the money to pay them more, or is this kind of the extent of of their budget and they just can't move anymore?
So this is the big debate, right? We think they do. Our enrollments have gone up each of the last 6 years. We are very much driven by tuition, and so as our enrollments, we just eclipsed 10,000 students, which was a goal the university had been shooting for about 20 years. That means that we have more money coming in than we've ever had before. And the question is, I think, the allocation of how those resources are being spent. We think that if the university were to prioritize its most valuable asset, which are the people that work there, that there would be no problem to be able to get us up to a living wage. So more specifically, the university has prioritized faculty up to this point in time, and we are just now, sometime during this fiscal year, we're going to get faculty up to the minimum pay for peer institutions. It means that the majority of our faculty were making less than the minimum of like what is the range for institutions like ours. And then the staff compensation plan, which is supposed to be the priority now, that has just been on the back burner for at least about 2 years since they announced this compensation plan. So they say that that's where they're moving. They say they're going to allocate, or they've asked for more money for that, but it remains to be seen if they're going to really follow through.
And so, your union has continued to rack up wins, even as, you haven't gotten everything that you want yet. You're going to continue fighting, but you were able to get something that y'all were fighting for only a week or two ago. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so over the summer, we reached out to philanthropy. It's what is often referred to at other universities as advancement or development. We reached out to a representative from there. We had an interesting idea. So our focus has been on the wage campaign, trying to get a living wage and sort of a minimum number for our lowest paid campus workers. But we've been trying to work on other issues while we're doing that. And one issue is to highlight the really terribly low pay that adjunct workers or adjunct faculty make. Adjunct faculty are part-time faculty. They're hired. They get no benefits. And in my college, they make $2,000 for an entire semester teaching a 3-credit-hour college class. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is to get the university to look at those and to raise those rates to make them even remotely competitive. We are one of the lowest. We pay them some of the least in the entire state, as best I can tell. And so there's a faculty award that is given to one adjunct. It's a university university adjunct award, the Excellence in Teaching Award. And one of the really noticeable things when you go to the faculty awards banquet is you realize that they don't get any money associated with the award. They get a little plaque that's like a certificate of recognition, and that's it. Other awards that are being given up there for other faculty members come with awards. Many of them are endowed. And so we propose to philanthropy to rename and fund the award for 5 years at $1,000 a year. And we, our plan was agreed to. So the university signed a contract with us and said that they would agree to it. We've already donated. We've already made the first contribution of $1,000. And then we didn't hear back from the university for about 3 months. And we got called into a meeting just before Thanksgiving with the director of that unit, who said, you know what, I'm really sorry to tell you that we're not going to be able to accept this. We have found someone else at the university that is going to endow 3 awards, including the adjunct award. And so this was a shock to us. We didn't think that the university would go back on the contract they signed with us. We don't think that's very good faith negotiations, and how that might be perceived for other people who are interested in donating. On the flip side, we're glad that 3 awards that weren't funded before now have some funding with them. And so we got these awards funded, but it became very clear to us that the university, probably the biggest sticking point for the university was naming an award after the campus labor union. And that was going to be funded by, union members' dues. So we were collectively coming together to recognize one classification of these workers that are just really, really underpaid.
Well, Lance, really exciting stuff. 10 seconds, where can folks go to learn more about UCW and join if they work on a campus across the state?
So in Alabama, it's ucwal.org. You can follow those. We are a big growing group. We represent almost 25% of CWA members across the state now.
ucwal.org. Lance,
yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Jacob.
We'll be right back, folks.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. Coming to you from the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We just talked about Alabama Power's rate freeze and how that relates to TVA customers. We also talked to a member of the United Campus Workers about how they're winning on campuses across the South. Coming up, we're going to be talking to JMA's Southern Program Director, Will Tucker, about their recall and justice campaign, trying to get Hyundai-Kia to negotiate a community benefits agreement with Southern communities. We'll also be taking a look at your chats on Facebook and YouTube at the Valley Labor Report. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number. The line will be open in the second half of the program. You can leave us a voicemail at any time or get the number ready at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/the Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
That's right. Please do that. Please reach out. That's one concrete way anyone listening can help us out. If your local or other organization or business or any sort of entity that you have some influence on, if you think they need to get their message out on the Valley Labor Report, if you think they need to work with us, please do get us connected. We'd love to talk about that. I want to add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. Let's get into our first segment, Last Week in Southern Labor, where we take a look at what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from November 25th to December the 5th. In new union campaigns, 55 workers at Palm Tran Public Transit System in Delray Beach, Florida, have filed a petition to hold a union election with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 1577. 141 workers at the City of Titusville's Public Works and Utilities Departments in Titusville, Florida, have filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 606. 11 workers at 3rd Street Stuff, looks like a coffee shop in Lexington, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the presumably independent 3rd Street Staff Union. 128 workers at the Pew Research Center in Washington, D.C. filed a petition to hold a union election with the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, NPEU-IFPTE Local 70. 42 workers at Midwestern Car Carrier in Kansas City, Missouri filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters Local 41. 7 workers at Amentum Services in Laredo, Texas filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists, IAM. 500 workers at the Environmental Defense Fund in Washington, D.C. filed a petition to hold a union election with the Washington-Baltimore News Guild, Local 32035. 4 workers at MCOR Government Services in Winchester, Virginia filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 99. In election results, 4,123 instructional workers at Osceola County Public Schools in Kissimmee, Florida, voted 1,205 to 15 in favor of recertifying the Osceola County Education Association as their union. 1,594 white-collar workers, also employed by Osceola County Public Schools in Kissimmee, Florida, voted 336 to 12 in favor of recertifying the Osceola County Education Association as their union. 1,305 non-instructional workers at Volusia County Schools in Deland, Florida, voted 267 to 12 in favor of recertifying the Volusia United Educators as their union. 200 workers at Lufthansa Technik in Puerto Rico voted in favor of maintaining their unionization with the IAM, defeating a decertification attempt pushed by the National Right to Work Foundation. This comes 3 years after they initially unionized, with the IAM saying the company is stalling in contract negotiations. 15 workers at Specs Family Partners in Temple, Texas voted 3-9 against unionization, with the Teamsters Local 657. In strikes and bargaining updates, Starbucks Workers United has expanded their strike against Starbucks now to more than 120 stores. Workers for the Chatham Area Transit in Savannah, Georgia, unionized with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 1324, are accusing the agency of misusing funds, stranding riders, and failing to address the concerns of workers and the public. Workers at the Louisville Metro Housing Authority, members of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 32BJ, ratified a new collective bargaining agreement with the agency. The new contract contains 100% employer-paid individual health care, stronger job protections, and clearer opportunities for training and advancement. Construction workers in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, are holding informational pickets to put pressure on Kairos to sign a project labor agreement for the construction of a new reactor. Project labor agreements ensure opportunities for local workers and level the playing field between union and non-union contractors. Skyhop drivers at airports nationwide, including at JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, have been on strike since November 2024 after the company illegally cut hours and fired pro-union workers. In August 2025, the National Labor Relations Board issued a sweeping complaint against Skyhop for a pattern of unlawful conduct and repeated violations of workers' rights. Skyhop has also faced criticism for misrepresenting itself as a certified woman-owned business to secure contracts with Delta Airlines and for refusing to comply with Los Angeles living wage requirements, even while collecting over $3.2 million in federal pandemic loans. Additionally, court filings and forensic accounting reports indicate that the CEO diverted company assets for personal use, including luxury cars, over $100,000 in retreats and other lavish expenses. Skyhop drivers and members of the Teamsters Local 210 hand-billed outside of the Palm Beach County Convention Center in Florida to inform the public of these ongoing issues with the company and its CEO. In political and legislative updates, Donald Trump has touted his support for apprenticeship programs. In April, he issued an executive order directing the Department of Labor to deliver a plan to reach and surpass 1 million new active apprentices within 120 days. No such plan has thus far materialized. Instead, tens of millions of appropriated funds for expanding apprenticeships have gone undelivered and expired. The Office of Apprenticeships within the Department of Labor is now 30% smaller than it was before Trump took office, and the growth rate for apprentices has decreased this year from 2024. Another one of Donald Trump's nominees to the TVA, a car salesman who inherited his business from his daddy, faced questions before the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works last week. He said he believes the TVA is, quote, more appropriate as a public entity, though I don't think he ruled out privatizing assets of the TVA. He said also that he no longer believes Joe Biden stole the 2020 election and said that sexual assault allegations made against him were to, quote, harass him. He also expressed strong support for nuclear energy. Black lung is killing more coal miners than it has in decades. So when Biden was in office, the Mine Safety and Health Administration announced a new rule to curb the culprit, silica dust. Silica dust is 20 times more toxic than coal dust, and miners are running into more of it as the coal seams get thinner and they have to go through more layers of rock to get to the coal. A decade ago, only 1 in 30 coal miners who had been mining for 20 to 24 years got black lung. Still too many, but now that number is 1 in 8. The Trump administration last week announced that its Mine Safety and Health Administration would, quote, reconsider the new rule with the intention of making changes. Estimates of the implementation cost of this new regulation are on the order of 57 cents per ton of coal. 14 workers at FEMA who publicly signed a letter warning Congress of the incompetence of the Trump administration in the area of emergency management were placed on administrative leave in August. Last week, CNN reported that they were reinstated, but within hours of the story breaking, the employees were resuspended. In internal union affairs, the International Association of Machinists, IAM, chartered a new local in Houston, Texas, Local 96, representing skilled locomotive engineers within their rail division. And Leonard Aguilar and Lorraine Montemayor have been sworn in as president and secretary-treasurer, respectively, of the Texas AFL-CIO, after the former president, Rick Levy, retired. If we missed something, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact. And if you'd like to see the rest of what happened last week in Southern labor, then you should subscribe to our newsletter at tvlr.fm. I believe we've got our guest on the line. Will Tucker is the director for Jobs to Move America's Southern program. The Jobs to Move America is conducting now, in coalition with other groups, a campaign called Recall Injustice at Hyundai-Kia, and Will is here to talk about that with us. Will, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Really great to have you and really excited about this campaign. Can you talk to us a little bit about the genesis of this campaign? How did it get started?
Sure. Yeah. Well, started several years ago, when we heard in Alabama through press reports, namely Reuters, an investigation by the news outlet Reuters. We heard several years ago that children, including those as young as 13 years old in some cases, were found illegally employed at several Hyundai-Kia suppliers in our state. Now, this was happening around the Black Belt region, in and around the Montgomery area, and it culminated in today, actually, the Hyundai-Kia's first U.S. assembly plant based in Montgomery, Alabama, the HMMA, Hyundai Motor Manufacturing plant, is actively being sued by the U.S. Department of Labor for profiting off of child labor in those cases in the past. Now, when this kind of thing happens in a state where you and your coalition are dedicated to workers' rights and are working to improve conditions for all workers, you really can't sit still. This demanded action, and we set out to address it.
That's incredible. You said just today the U.S. Department of Labor announced that they are filing a lawsuit against HMMA for profiting off of child labor. And that's important. The thing that I caught there is that they're actually going after Hyundai, not just the suppliers. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, actually, this is a case that's been going on for a little over a year. But the important thing to remember is that this case is proceeding through the federal courts. So federal judges have not kind of brushed this off. It's a really serious issue, and they're taking it as such. But the lawsuit was filed back in 2024.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't know if there was something new that came out. Along with this campaign, Jobs to Move America, along with the Columbia Labor Lab, released a report about prison labor in Hyundai-Kia's supply chain, particularly in the Montgomery area. Can you talk to us about what some of the key findings were of that report?
Well, sure. And we got to this point because when we heard about the cases of child labor several years ago, we set out to find, what are the other kinds of workers in precarious positions that are being profited off of in this supply chain. And pretty quickly, we found that incarcerated workers through Alabama's work release system were employed in Hyundai-Kia suppliers. Now, this was going on similar to the issues of child labor in the Montgomery area and down around that area in the Alabama Black Belt. And we set out to study the impact of the incarcerated labor in the supply chain, not only on the incarcerated workers themselves, but also on the wages and working conditions for all free world workers in those supply chain locations as well. And so Jobs to Move America set out to survey auto workers, auto supplier workers in the region, and we wound up surveying 650 auto supply chain workers last year. And handed that data over for analysis to Columbia Labor Lab. And the top line report, or the top line finding in the report, is actually that a 10% increase in the share of incarcerated workers at a plant was associated in the study with a 10 to 14% drop in wages for all workers in that plant. And we also found that overall, workers in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain reported earning 10 to 15% less than other auto supply chain workers in Alabama. Workers also reported in this survey experiencing more health and safety hazards and negative experiences like wage theft, forced overtime, and harassment. And of course, we centered at the very outset the incarcerated workers who were involved in this system as well. And so our organizers at Jobs to Move America visited the prison facilities where they lived, visited the work sites where they worked, and got to know a few of these workers quite well, and have actually since helped to advocate for their release on parole. And we're happy to say that several of those workers who participated in our survey and organized with us have been released on parole in the past year.
That's really, really incredible. And that is, talk to us a little bit about the mechanism by which that happens. I think it's pretty intuitive, but it's worth spelling it out for folks. How is it, even if Hyundai is utilizing prison labor, why does that bring down wages for free world workers?
Sure. Well, I think it's really important to point out at the outset that this is not the incarcerated workers' fault. They are part of a system that private companies benefit off of in Alabama. So Alabama has a work release system, which is a bit of a misnomer. This is not a system that is designed to prepare workers or incarcerated people for release, such as a transitional center that you might see in another state. These are work camps. In many cases, they're co-sited. They're on the same sites as the camps where workers generations ago built the state's highway system. Incarcerated workers generations ago built the state's highway systems. And so these are work camps. I've met folks who are serving life sentences in these work camps and are employed by private companies. And the way it works is that the state has determined that these folks, these workers, are not a threat to anyone, themselves or anyone, and that they can go, as a result of that determination, out into the community. And it's absolutely absurd that the state says that these workers can go out and work in a dangerous factory setting with really fast line speeds and with very, very little training in some cases, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, It's okay to release them into the free world to do that, but then they must go back to the prison just to sleep at night. It's a really absurd system that we've created here. But you asked about the mechanism, and that's that. To get a little bit into the weeds, the state requires that incarcerated workers make the same wages as the folks that they're working right alongside. So these incarcerated workers are, as I said, they're directly employed by the companies, and they work right alongside, side by side, with free world workers. And since the state requires that they make the same, the low wages that are afforded to the incarcerated workers kind of percolate out through the rest of the plants, and that's how we get to this finding in a roundabout way. I'd encourage everybody to go read the report, but that's how we get to this finding that a 10% increase in the share of incarcerated workers at a plant is associated with a 10 to 15% drop in wages for all workers at that plant.
And another reason, so it sounds like, because they have to pay the same, there's an incentive for the company to try to do everything that they can to bring the free workers' wages down a little bit so that they can get a sort of a benefit from the incarcerated workers. And a reason that the incarcerated workers would be willing to accept such lower wages, which are even lower than, ultimately than what their free counterparts get, because a bunch of that is garnished by the Alabama Department of Corrections. But the reason that they're willing to accept lower compensation than maybe they would if they were in the free world is because the conditions in Alabama's prisons are so horrific. I know that the report doesn't go much into that, but there's been another documentary that was released about Alabama's prisons, The Alabama Solution, on HBO. I would recommend folks going and watching that. There's also a new book about Alabama's prisons, based largely on interviews with prisoners in the state of Alabama. But could you talk a little bit about what, even just some of the recent media has found about what it is like to be in a prison in the state of Alabama?
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right. I mean, put this into context, right? You go and you talk to some of these incarcerated workers who are living in a forced prison labor system, and in the work release facilities. And, why are they there? Why do they view that as like the safest of their available options? Well, it's because at Alabama's close and medium security facilities, both the federal Department of Justice and other investigating agencies, federal judges through the years, multiple times for generations have determined that Alabama's prisons are incredibly dangerous. And this bears out in the data. If you look at the number of murders, suicides, overdoses, serious mental health issues in our close and medium security facilities, they're incredibly, incredibly dangerous spaces. And this is rooted in the overcrowding of our prison system, which is itself rooted in decades of carceral policies passed by the legislature, and just a massive over-criminalization of largely communities of color in Alabama, but all poor communities and working class communities in Alabama in general have been affected by this. And so you have a massive overcrowding problem. You pair that with an understaffing issue at these prisons, and those two kind of interrelated ills of overcrowding and understaffing have created incredibly dangerous conditions in the close and medium security facilities. And one of the only available release valves for a very small number of workers, incarcerated people overall, is the work release system. And there are, at any given time between 1,000 and 1,200 workers in the work release system in Alabama. And these facilities are overcrowded as well, but the data bears out as well that there are fewer serious assaults, fewer sexual assaults, fewer murders, fewer really dangerous conditions in these work release facilities. And so, if you are incarcerated person in Alabama and you are serving let's say that you're serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole, perhaps under Alabama's Habitual Felony Offender Act, which is a 3 strikes law that can take you away for life if one of your felony offenses is as simple as a simple marijuana possession charge. That's what we're dealing with in Alabama. Let's say that you're in that position and you need to protect yourself, and the available option to you is to enter a forced prison labor system. That's something that you might consider. And so that's how folks get into this system, and that's how folks are willing to accept not only the lower wages, but also the coercion that comes from being in this system. Imagine if you're in that position and you get hurt at work. What is your recourse? If you speak up about if you become a problem at work, you're not only at risk of being fired, you're at risk of being fired and then sent back deeper into Alabama's prison system, back to these close and medium security facilities. So it's not only that the companies who hire from the work release system get to benefit from lower wages paid to those workers. It's also that the workers are in an incredibly precarious position and could really, really benefit from, to cut to the chase, solidarity from free world workers and all of us on the outside.
Absolutely. I think if I'm not remembering incorrectly, your report talks about a prisoner who got an injury and was, basically kind of shoot along and told to continue working. And maybe I'm remembering that from something else potentially. But
that's absolutely right. Yeah. That's Mark Miller. Mark has been released on parole and has been an incredibly effective storyteller about his issue. And he was employed at a Hyundai-Kia supplier in Montgomery and got seriously injured. And that injury was just not taken seriously in the moment. It wasn't taken seriously back at the back at the work camp where he lived. And Mark has serious chronic issues with that injury. Broke several of his ribs and still has a lot of pain related to that to this day. So, yeah.
And the stat that you mentioned that there's overcrowding, there's understaffing, there's also corrupt staffing. One of the largest causes of death in Alabama's prison systems are overdoses. And how are the drugs getting into the prisons? It's the prison guards are bringing drugs into the prisons. Almost certainly, that's what basically everybody believes. So overcrowding, understaffing, corrupt staffing, and the stat that has stuck with me since I've read it is that there's a prisoner dying in Alabama's prisons almost every day. It's like 300 people a year, and in the 80s, there was a boiling point with Alabama's prisons where there was a lot of people kind of running around with their hair on fire saying that something needs to be done, Republicans and Democrats, people in the federal government and people in the state government. And the thing that got them to that tipping point was there were 20 to 30 people dying per year in Alabama's prisons. And so things are literally tenfold worse than they were 50 years ago. And now it seems like nobody wants to do anything. I mean, the attorney general was interviewed for the Alabama Solution, and he was like, "No, I mean everything's fine," basically. Really, really gross stuff. We want to we'll continue talking about the prison situation later on, but I want to focus a little bit. More on the campaign itself and some other of the key findings. In addition to the exploitation of prison labor and kind of pitting prison workers against free world workers and decreasing wages in that way, your report also found prevalence of death and injury over the last 10 years at least 12 workers have died working for companies in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain. OSHA inspections documented 854 safety violations, more than 1,000 reported injuries and illnesses. Evidence of child labor, we've talked about that. Federal and state investigators, along with journalists, uncovered children as young as 13 illegally employed in at least 9 Hyundai-Kia suppliers in Alabama. Environmental violations, I had not been tracking this. Hyundai-Kia's U.S. assembly plants have incurred financial penalties exceeding those paid by all other automotive manufacturing plants in Alabama and Georgia for environmental violations, paying over $158 million in environmental penalties. And so, that's a lot of stuff that the Recall and Justice campaign has pointed to as problematic. And so, what is the goal here? What are the organizations that Jobs to Move America is in coalition with? What are y'all pushing for from Hyundai-Kia as a response to these myriad of issues in their supply chain across the South?
Right. Well, look, the top line numbers from the report and I would encourage everybody to go to recallinjustice.org and read these reports. Not only the Columbia Labor Lab report about prison labor in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain and the effects there, but also the report Hidden in Plain Sight, which is the report you're referencing that covers all these issues. And these top line numbers are absolutely staggering, in my opinion, of course. But look, what it shows is that the government agencies that oversee these things, the enforcement actions, the fines, it's all been insufficient. It's all been woefully insufficient to ensure that Hyundai-Kia is conducting its business in a responsible and safe way while offering high quality jobs and living wages to our communities. And so, that's just not what we see here, and we have to have better, and so the Recall and Justice coalition that we're building is coalescing around this demand. We have a plan to persuade Hyundai-Kia to come to the negotiating table with our coalition of community and labor partners from Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, California, and negotiate a better way forward to prevent these negative impacts on our communities from continuing to happen. I mean, we sent a letter from Recall and Justice. It was signed by about 40 organizations. Now that had Central Labor Councils signed on. It had state federation presidents signed on. It had other national and regional labor partners signed on. It also had grassroots organizations from places like Savannah and Montgomery, Alabama, and the surrounding area in Black Belt, Alabama, out of Birmingham, and in Louisiana as well. And all of these groups are coming together to say with one voice that we have to see better behavior. We have to see better outcomes in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain, especially as this company is growing in our region, as Hyundai-Kia are expanding their operations, not just with the Meta plant over outside of Savannah, Georgia, which was in the news earlier this year, of course, with the largest federal immigration enforcement at a work site in recent memory. They're also expanding in Louisiana. So down in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, Hyundai-Kia wants to put in a steel mill to supply steel to the auto supply chain throughout Alabama and Georgia. And look, all of these groups, labor partners, unions, and local unions to CLCs to state feds, to regional directors from several major manufacturing unions, our brothers and sisters over at Steelworkers and UAW, and many others are coming together to say in one voice that the enforcement actions aren't enough. The outcomes are terrible right now, and we need to see better for our communities.
And so y'all are, again, pressuring Hyundai-Kia to come negotiate a community benefits agreement. We're referring to the company as Hyundai-Kia because, most people know Hyundai and Kia as separate companies, but they're owned ultimately by the same entity. And at this point, are there concrete demands that you would like to see in a community benefits agreement, or that certain of your coalition partners would like to see in a community benefits agreement? Or is the first step really getting to the bargaining table and establishing a maybe more productive relationship between the company and the communities that are generating all of its profits?
Yeah, well, let's do just a quick recap of everything we talked about here, right? So we have the documented incidents of child labor in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain in Alabama. We have the low-wage employment by Hyundai-Kia suppliers of incarcerated people in Alabama's prison labor system. We have the serious safety problems that you just laid out for us, including the 12 deaths in 10 years in this supply chain and other serious injuries across the supply chain. We've also got the degradation of water resources tied to the production at these facilities, and the environmental issues that you mentioned as well. And look, still, if you take Hyundai-Kia at its word, these practices are inconsistent with their commitments to human rights at the international level. And I'll just read that. It's Hyundai-Kia's stated intention is to strive to prevent and mitigate the negative effects of business activities on human rights. And, yet these specific problems that we're laying out, that we are documenting here and presenting to them, are harming both the workforce and the communities where they operate. And so what to do about this now? We have to find a better way forward, and we have to work together to coalesce around, coalesce around a table to negotiate a solution here. And that's our proposed solution. That's what we're persuading the company to do. We want to see Hyundai-Kia make ambitious, enforceable commitments to their workers and to their neighbors through a community benefits agreement, which again, I'll just say, I'll go back and explain. This is a private contract between community groups and an employer. It's designed to achieve labor standards, job standards, and equity measures, and it can be enforced through binding arbitration. And really importantly, our coalition in Alabama has successfully negotiated one of these agreements. We have an active community benefits agreement up in Anniston, Alabama, with New Flyer of America, which is a manufacturer of electric transit buses. There's a brand new union at the plant in Anniston with IUE-CWA, and many other really positive outcomes that are directly related to the community benefits agreement, including, new job standards and equity measures. And so we've done this before. And we have a model that works, and we are right now coalescing together, again, this group of 40 organizations as Recall Injustice, to invite the company, Hyundai-Kia, to come to the table to negotiate a community benefits agreement with us to address these really, really serious issues that really ultimately, Jacob, they represent the sins of the past in the South. They bring to mind the sins of the past. We've highlighted the fact that generations ago, when we had cotton planters and when we had mining companies dominating our region in the South, they used captive labor. They retaliated against workers who wished to organize. They turned a blind eye to serious injuries and deaths in the workplace accidents that occurred back then. They degraded water resources. They displaced Black residents and communities of color. They just overall perpetuated the system of just staggering social injustice. And ultimately, we don't want to go back there. And we don't believe that Hyundai-Kia wishes to recreate the sins of the past. We're going to hold them to their word, their stated intention to strive for better human rights outcomes and meet them on that level. Propose a win-win solution where we can come together as a strong company and as a strong coalition of community and labor groups to create a community benefits agreement that addresses these issues for the benefit of everybody.
The elephant in the room in conversations about this is, how do you get this huge international multi-billion-dollar corporation to agree to these things? You know, particularly in the United States, we see corporations and across the world be willing to spend more money fighting a union than they would have to spend bargaining or agreeing to a fair union contract. And I know that this isn't a union campaign per se, but you're asking ultimately. The company would be spending more money, and they would be ceding some of their power over their decision making to the communities that they're in. And so there's a similar dynamic here. And we just talked earlier in the program about how Jacksonville State University in Alabama was willing to spend 3 times the amount of money on an educator award so that the union's name would not be attached to it. The Communication Workers of America were willing to donate some number of thousands of dollars to pay for, an incentive award for educators at Jacksonville State University, and they went out and they were able to pull up 3 times that amount of money so that they didn't have to have the union's name on the award, right? And you see stuff like that happen all of the time. And so how is the Recall and Justice campaign going to be able to get this huge corporation to assent to the community's demands?
Well, sure. That's a great question, of course. And when I'm traveling to places like Savannah, where Hyundai has built the Meta plant and the kind of surrounding area, one of the largest, if not the largest, I believe, actually, economic development projects in Georgia history. When you talk to people from Ascension Parish in Louisiana, when you talk to folks in Montgomery, Alabama, where Hyundai Motor Manufacturing has been located for almost 20 years now, the first thing to remind people is that workers and communities do have power. And if we don't join together as one voice and unify around a single demand, request, effort to persuade the company to come to the table to negotiate with us, there's whether the company intends to do it or not, and of course we know how the history of industry in the South, as I said, there's an element of divide and conquer that can take place, and we just can't allow that to happen. And so the first step here is not allowing that to happen, coming together as one voice and signing on to a letter as we did, and then taking our effort directly to key decision makers, which is what we did under 2 weeks ago, or rather over 2 weeks ago, in the LA Auto Show in Los Angeles. And so 40 organizations signed the Recall and Justice at Hyundai-Kia letter. We took that letter directly to executives. We met them during the media day ahead of the LA Auto Show earlier, or rather last month, and just put this letter directly in the hand of the highest executive that we met was Kia's North American CEO. We also demonstrated in front of the LA Auto Show, bringing attention to these issues, namely the tragic 12 deaths over 10 years in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain, out in front of the LA Auto Show with about more than 6 partners and community members in Los Angeles, from Korean American organizations in Los Angeles to our community coalition partners from Alabama who flew out, from partners in Savannah, and this kind of working together, this coalescing, this coming together as a coalition to in a unified way persuade the company to take these issues seriously is the starting point. Now, we have to remember that workers have power, that communities have power. They have different kinds of power. They have symbolic power, but they also have institutional power, and they have associational power and the bonds of solidarity that we build across all of these organizations. And we have structural power. You know, we have to remember that workers hold structural power as well. And you know, with that in mind, we've got to put one foot in front of the other, and we have to coalesce together and build solidarity between labor and community partners, and between workers and their neighbors in places like Alabama, Georgia, and Louisiana, and California, and move this forward. Now, I think one of the things that we're going to be looking at in early 2026 is how do we take this effort international? You know, we have natural allies that we want to meet and grow in solidarity with from all corners of the world. When you're dealing with a multinational of this size and scale, you know, you're going to be able to find solidarity with folks who are dealing with similar issues in all corners of the world. And so we are going to take this international. We're going to go to those places, meet those workers and neighbors and communities and unions, and continue to build out this solidarity among the coalition that we're building.
Yeah, you know, folks may be surprised to learn that in South Korea, where Hyundai and Kia come from, the workers there are unionized with the Korean Metal Workers Union, and the UAW and the Korean Metal Workers Union have recently been, increasing their talks, and they signed an agreement only a few months ago to increase cooperation. So looking forward to seeing more on that, and I'm sure that there will be conversations happening with your folks around those things as well. Will Tucker is the director for Jobs to Move America's Southern program, talking to us about the Recall Injustice at Hyundai-Kia campaign. Will, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jacob. Longtime listener, supporter of their program. Appreciate what you do. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a break really quick. We'll be right back with Boss Watch. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Appreciate y'all tuning in and enjoyed that conversation with Will Tucker. If you missed it, find us on Facebook and YouTube at the Valley Labor Report. Let's get to Boss Watch. We're going to jump right into Union Busters to start with, since we're running a little behind schedule. Union Busters, as you know, covers national updates, and it is sponsored by Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that Union Busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new filings from this week. ATI Materials in Texas hired Cummings Group for $3,750 a day. Cassia Healthcare, Chapel View Healthcare Center in Minnesota, hired Government Resources Consultants of America. There are 2 union elections open at their facilities now. And just as a reminder, due to a lack of enforcement, some labor relations consultants may disregard the law and fail to report their activities to the U.S. Department of Labor. Therefore, it's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Labor Management Standards, OLMS. It's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to that office, and you can reach them via email at olms-public@dol.gov, by calling 202-693-0123, or by contacting your nearest OLMS office. If you need any assistance, you can contact Labor Lab at contact@laborlab.us. Heading up to Alabama, AL.com has an excellent piece analyzing the last decade of data from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They counted more than 3,600 severe injuries and deaths at nearly 2,000 Alabama employers over the last decade. They found that poultry companies and manufacturing plants are among the employers with the most reported injuries and deaths, according to that data. Over 300 of those 3,600 severe injuries and deaths were deaths. Jefferson County saw the most deaths at nearly 50. You can read the entire report at OSHA Reports Which Alabama Employers Report the Most Injuries and Deaths in AL.com. And, really, really, really bad stuff. Wayne Sanderson Farms reported the most severe injuries and deaths with a total of 48 severe injuries and 1 fatality. Over in Georgia, the U.S. Department of Labor safety investigators determined that an engineering and construction company exposed workers to safety hazards after an investigation into a worker fatality at the Hanwha Q Cells Georgia Inc. plant in White, Georgia. OSHA issued Wong E&C America Incorporated a citation with a serious violation under OSHA's General Duty Clause for failing to protect employees against asphyxiation hazards related to nitrogen gas, and another serious violation for not providing effective information on training on hazards related to nitrogen gas and oxygen deficient atmospheres. The employer faces $20,522 in proposed penalties. That's going to be it for the first half of our program. If you want to continue listening, we got a whole second half lined up for you. You can find us online at Facebook and YouTube at The Valley Labor Report. You can subscribe to our newsletters at TVLR.fm. You can donate and support the program. Help us stay on the air at TVLR.fm/donate. And you can buy our merch at tvlr.fm/store. We've got a great interview lined up in the second half of the program asking the question, is it time for populists to abandon the Democratic Party? Really excited for that conversation. If you don't tune into us online to hear it, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. We're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying tuned. We're going to go ahead and open up the phones. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to give us a call, folks, the phones are open. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Would love to take some calls. Appreciate everybody tuning in to us. Hope you enjoyed the show so far. Before we get to our guests, they'll be on in about 10 minutes. Adam, you have been tracking the SCORE Act. You know, you're a big football fan, and the SCORE Act has to do with like NIL and stuff like that. What's been going on there? What does the SCORE Act do, and how have, the AFL-CIO put out a press release about it. How have they responded to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you even barely pay attention to sports, you'll no doubt have heard a whole lot of hand-wringing about the NCAA and college sports, especially football and basketball, because those are the two big money makers, right? Basketball season just kicked off, and of course, this weekend features the big conference championship games in football, so that's going to determine who makes the playoffs, which is now a 12-team spectacle generating massive revenue, especially through TV deals. And, the big news in college football recently was the departure of Lane Kiffin. He's the head coach, or was the head coach of Ole Miss, which is a school I'm not a huge fan of as a Southern Miss guy. But he was the head coach there, and he left to go become the coach of their rival to the south, LSU. And this is despite the fact that Ole Miss is going to the playoffs, right? Their season is not over. This is before the season has concluded. They have at least one game remaining, right, in the playoffs. But because they're in the playoffs, they still have the potential to play for a national championship, technically. So that's pretty wild, and it's gotten a lot of attention. And this comes amid a lot of chaos in the system with players now being paid above board. There's always been various ways of paying players in college, but now there's, as you mentioned, the NIL, name, image, likeness. There are ways for boosters to legally contribute funds to the teams and to the players. And, now you have players and coaches swapping teams before seasons are even up. You've got the concentration of money and power amid a handful of dominant programs and conferences. And, all of this is also happening amid not just the legalization of sports betting, but its sudden presence, like, everywhere, it seems. I mean, if you tune into sports at all now, you're just really bombarded with gambling ads. It's interesting because growing up, that was a big no-no. They would kind of wink and nod every now and then, hint at it, but it was definitely not incorporated into the broadcast like it is today. So amid all this chaos and controversy, some Republicans in Congress sought to pass the SCORE Act to try to bring in what they saw as their form of regulation. And I'm just going to be honest with you, Jacob, I haven't followed it super closely because, well, not a lot's happening in Congress. If you've been paying attention, not a whole lot gets done there. So I kind of haven't followed it super closely until just recently learned that there was going to be a vote in the House, or at least it seemed like there would be a vote in the House. So with that pending, AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler issued the following statement regarding the SCORE Act, which is technically called the Student Compensation and Opportunity Through Rights and Endorsements Act, H.R. 4312. So President Shuler said, college athletes have been fighting for years for fair treatment in an industry that generates billions in revenue off their talent and hard work. America's unions have stood with them. In recent years, athletes have made important progress, but the SCORE Act would unravel that progress and entrench the power of conferences and schools at their expense. The bill is union-busting policy in action, stripping college athletes of basic and wide-ranging rights in the workplace, allowing schools to have ultimate control over athletes' name, image, and likeness, and empowering the NCAA instead of democratically elected legislatures to establish rules on athlete compensation. Now more than ever, college athletes need a voice in how they're treated. The SCORE Act takes us in the opposite direction, stifling athletes' voices and opening the door to more exploitation. So again, that was AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler. Since then, the House vote on the bill has been yanked due to bipartisan backlash, right? So even some of the Republicans have got second thoughts about this bill. It's a very, very controversial issue to dive into, and it's something that a lot of people are very passionate about, right? We're doing talk radio, but if you tune into talk radio, more than likely you're probably tuning into sports radio, right? Sports dominates talk radio. Sports is such a huge part of our culture, especially here in the South where college football is so huge. I mean, just last weekend we had the Iron Bowl. That's Alabama versus Auburn, for those of you who don't know. And it's like a national holiday. It's certainly like a state holiday. The whole state shuts down pretty much. Everybody is, involved and plugged into it. So, I am a fan of college sports. I've been watching college sports my whole life, and I do think it's really past time to have some regulation. We need some guardrails, not just to protect the integrity of the sports, but, really to protect the athletes and the other workers who are generating billions in revenue. And you can take a look at the professional sports leagues. It's not, a mystery how we can make some progress here. We know that some athletes over the years have tried to organize unions. They've dealt with some roadblocks. Right now, with the Trump administration in control of the NLRB and, unfriendly federal environment, it seems like a tough time right now to organize unions in the college athlete space. But nevertheless, I think it's something that needs to be done. If you look at the professional athletes, whether it's hockey, football, baseball, basketball, right? They all have unions. They have collective bargaining agreements. And, it's also proof that collective bargaining agreements can be done in a way that protects and regulates and also allows for additional compensation for talent, right? Like, if you're an all-star quarterback in the NFL, you're getting paid more than the backup punter, right? And that's okay. That's understood, right? You're generating more value and you're getting a bigger share of it. But there's still a CBA in place to protect everybody involved. And that's not to say the professional sports leagues are perfect. By no stretch are they. Same with the players' unions in the professional leagues. I think there's been a lot of issues over the years, and I know Major League Baseball is actually heading for negotiations pretty soon. So, but we'll see what happens in the college space. It looks like the SCORE Act may be on pause for now. But there's definitely an appetite for regulation. You hear about it all the time. It's bleeding into political media, not just in the sports media. There's really a lot of consternation right now about the calendar in college sports and just this idea that people are swapping teams. Even the coaches now swapping teams before the season is up. Issues with tampering, right? And because obviously what happens when the coach leaves, they're going to want to bring half their team with them. And that's going to be more and more of a problem. There's a lack of stability in regulation currently. There are some people making off like bandits, making a lot of money, but there's just a lot of unpredictability for the players themselves. Who are generating this value. And I don't think it's a lot to ask that they get a contract of some kind. The coaches have contracts. The TV stations, they have contracts, right? They have something in writing to guarantee what they're going to get. So I think a collective bargaining contract is the way forward for college athletics. And I know that's not something you're going to hear on ESPN probably, but it's the truth because we know that collective action among workers is the best way to ensure the workers are treated fairly and respectfully and with dignity and equity. And, I don't think college athletes are any different. The professors on campus are organizing. The grad students on campus are organizing. The maintenance staff and grounds crew, everyone has a right to a union, and these players do too.
And the biggest problem I think that the unions have with this is that it explicitly prohibits employee status for college athletes. Interestingly, there has been some bipartisan opposition to this. Chip Roy from Texas, a Republican, wrote in a tweet that he would be opposing the bill if it came before a floor vote, and he had some interesting questions that he asked. One of the questions that I thought was the most interesting was, to the extent we accept federal involvement due to antitrust issues, if we're going to restrict athletes and provide liability protections, then why shouldn't we go ahead and restrict universities and coaches? I think we should end the ridiculous contracts for coaches, especially buyouts for universities begging for liability reforms. I think that's obviously right. If you're going to restrict the ability of athletes to earn, then why would you not restrict the ability of, universities to generate revenue from the athletes or from the coaches to
right. Because you salaries. That's part of the context, right? You have coaches who are getting fired mid-season and then getting paid tens of millions of dollars to sit on their ass. Right. Or, in most cases, go get another job if they want to. But yeah, it's really a wild situation, and I'm glad to see some bipartisan pushback. We definitely, I think there has to be some changes to the system. What that looks like, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I definitely do not want to see anything like this where it's going to restrict the rights of these players to organize and to get what they actually deserve.
We've got our guests on the line now. Jared Abbott is a researcher at the Center for Working Class Politics, and Les Leopold is the executive director of the Labor Institute, also author of the book Wall Street's War on Workers, How Mass Layoffs and Greed Are Destroying the Working Class and What to Do About It. They, together with another person and in cooperation with YouGov and Jacobin, created a report titled Democrats' Rust Belt Struggles and the Promise of Independent Politics. Jared and Les, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Appreciate your time. Looking forward to the conversation. And just as an intro to it, can you give us a little bit of talk to us a little bit about the political landscape as you see it, and particularly the parts that made you want to conduct this study?
Go ahead, Jared.
Well, it's sort of the big problem that we've seen for a really long time on the Democratic side, which is the hemorrhaging of working class voters from, Democratic politics and from progressive politics, particularly in places that have been hit really hard by mass scale layoffs, over the past 40 years. And we wanted to see, if the Democrats' decades of essentially, betraying working class people was the source of, the significant negative results that they're getting among working class voters in the Rust Belt. And so we decided to focus on 4 key states, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, to assess just how bad the damage is with respect to the Democrats and the working class voters in those states, and what the possibilities for winning some of them back, either to the Democrats or potentially to an independent workers formation of some kind outside the Democratic Party may be.
And so, Les, when you conducted the study, what were the key findings?
Well, there were several. I think one key finding is that a Democrat who says good things and an independent who says exactly the same thing, the Democrat will have a headwind of about losing 8% before they even enter the campaign. In Ohio, it's 16%. So a guy like Sherrod Brown running as a Democrat starts off 16% behind, more or less, compared to what an independent would do. That was one big finding. Another big finding, I think, is that, and this one kind of really blew my mind. I think Jared was prepared for some of the headwind stuff, but I wasn't prepared for this finding. 57% of the voters of those 4 states, and it was even across all the states, 57% support the idea of a new independent workers' political association, totally independent of the Democrats and Republicans, that would run on a very radical populist economic platform. I would, and only, what was it, Jared? 18% opposed?
Something like that, quite small.
Yeah, very small opposition. That finding, I think, is remarkable, and I think tells us where the future of working class politics is going.
Folks should definitely read the whole report. I mean, there's a lot in there, as you said. I mean, there's something like 80 pages, so lots of things to really dive into. And you know, before we talk about a little bit of the methodology, I'm interested in that. Just thinking about the prospect of running with a quote unquote Democratic tailwind of 8 to 16%. I think you found in Pennsylvania that was the only one of the 4 states where there wasn't a penalty for running as a Democrat rather than an independent. But how do you think candidates should weigh a Democratic penalty versus running as an independent in a race like Dan Osborne's in Nebraska, where there was no Democrat, versus what would end up being the reality in many states across the country? I think particularly in Ohio or Wisconsin, I don't think that the Democrats are so defeated that there would be a scenario in the near future where a U.S. Senate or a gubernatorial campaign goes without a Democrat. You know, in those cases, you have a spoiler penalty. You know, how do you think candidates should be thinking about maybe a spoiler penalty versus a Democratic penalty in situations where you don't have the opportunity to run alone like Dan Osborne did in Nebraska?
Well, it's simple. Just don't do it. There's no more to it than that. We're only proposing that you would do these sorts of independent runs in places where a Democrat basically wouldn't run, or where the Democratic Party is so weakened that they're a marginal player in other words, in single party states and districts, right?
I think one of the best ways to think about this is think about it at the congressional level. There are 130 congressional districts where the Democrats lose by over 25%. So those are one-party districts. There's about 20 of them in the 4 states that we looked at. And there's no problem of being a spoiler there. It gets more complicated when you move up to many states where there's actually a contest for governor and for senator. But in these congressional districts, the Democratic Party is dead. And it's wide open. I'm convinced that in almost every one of those districts, an independent working class candidate on a good populist platform designed by Jared would run ahead of the Democrat, and the Democrat would be the spoiler.
And it goes the other way too, by the way. We're less focused on this because we want to, have a large electoral majority to pass reforms that working class people have needed for decades and haven't gotten. But still, there's many opportunities for independents to run against Democrats too in one-party Democratic districts, and that could also provide a potential source of support for a working class oriented caucus within the House that's not beholden to either party. So we're definitely focused on the one-party Republican districts mostly, but we should also keep open, for those progressives that are thinking about trying to knock off shitty corporate Democrats, doing the same thing in a one-party Democratic district.
And that is why I thought that this, this report is particularly relevant for our context. I know that it studied particularly the Rust Belt, which is quite different than the Southeast, than Alabama in a lot of ways. But the one-partiness that you describe is like so much worse in the state of Alabama. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Literally, the majority of seats that I vote for in my area are uncontested. It's probably only like 20% of the time I even get a choice. And actually, for the last 2 or 3 election cycles, this shows you how dead the Democratic Party is in Alabama. The Libertarian Party has more people on my ballot than the Democrats. I mean, it's astounding. And so there are some people I'm excited to know across the state that are running independent, labor-focused campaigns for the state house in Alabama. I'm not aware of any running for Congress on such a platform. But what would you say about the relevance for your am I right to interpret this as like particularly relevant for Alabama, even though it was focused on the Rust Belt?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more to say. This is not something that's specific to the Rust Belt. There may be messaging and issue focused, differences because the political economy of the areas are obviously a lot different and the demographics are different. But the basic idea of, the Democratic Party label being utterly toxic is the same thing. And there's absolutely no reason why that shouldn't happen in Alabama. And frankly, I didn't know that you had independent, labor-focused candidates running for the state house in Alabama. I'd love to actually learn more about that and talk to them because that's great to hear.
I know at least one is public right now. Joe Cleveland is running for State House District. Do we remember 35? Is that it? That doesn't sound right. But you might and I can connect y'all if you'd like to. We've had him on the program before. He is the recording secretary for a machinists local union in Anniston. He is he works in like steel forging, and he's also on the state council for the machinists union. So a very similar profile to Dan Osborne in a lot of ways, I think. A former preacher as well. And so, I'm really excited about his. I don't know if any, I think there's 1 or 2 others, but I'm not sure. I don't think they're public yet. So, it's some exciting stuff, and exciting opportunities, I think. And so if you don't have anything else on that or anything that I've talked about already, I'm interested in how you conducted the findings, like, methodologically, how did you ensure that how was everything kind of set up, and how did you ensure that your findings were robust and like statistically significant?
It was easy. I just left it to Jared. No, I just left it to Jared.
Well, no, I mean, so one of the things that we did, which is, not super common with push-pull polling in the pundit world, is rather than just sort of giving people a bunch of different messages that they would read and then sort of put on a scale of 1 to 5, we did what's called a randomized controlled trial, where we had several different versions of, say, the economic populist messaging that were very similar, except for, slight changes, like, for instance, one running as an independent or one running as a Democrat. And then we just randomly gave certain versions of that to one group of people in the survey and certain to others, so that, we could really isolate the impact of those particular language and messaging changes in a way that is much more rigorous than what you see with traditional messaging. And by the way, we also did that with a really interesting idea that Les has been beating the drum about, and that hopefully we can get more politicians to beat the drum about, which is an idea of having a ballot initiative in the 25 or whatever states of the country that allow for it, to basically stop big corporations, from involuntarily laying off workers without some sort of meaningful and just compensation. And we basically threw a battery of opposition messaging so people would get here's a ballot initiative, but then some of them would also get just randomly chosen parts of the survey would also get here's some opposition messaging that says all the negative things that are going to be said about this ballot initiative, like it's going to bring communism, or it's going to be really expensive, or it's going to drive employers out of the state, or whatever. And then another group also got a response to the counter messaging. And so we were able to see how popular this ballot initiative was under these much more real world circumstances than you see with most polling. And by the way, we found that this policy, which is completely unknown and not being brought up by any Democratic politicians, even the best economic populists, was quite popular even after this barrage of opposition messaging. So that's sort of the highlights, I would say, in terms of the way that we conducted the study. The other thing that we did, which was methodologically interesting, and probably your listeners and viewers are asleep at this point, but just to give a couple more sentences, rather than testing economic policies based on how much do you like this policy or how much do you like that policy, which offers people the opportunity to basically just agree or disagree with more or less everything, we forced people in the survey to rank the economic policy priorities that they care about most. And it gave us a really interesting picture of what working class voters in the Rust Belt care about in terms of economic policies and what might constitute a robust and popular economic policy agenda in places like in purple and red districts. And we found some really interesting things there that voters, for instance, prioritize a federal jobs guarantee and a program to stop mass layoffs above the majority of other economic policies that Democrats are putting out into the world today.
Yeah, what I found that was really cool is people got to see 4 issues at a time, right, Jared?
Yeah.
And how many sets of 4 did they get to see?
Like 11, I think.
Okay, so each time they had to say, I like this one the most of the 4, I like this one the least. And that over, and then they did that 11 times. That to me was, I felt really good about the results after doing that because people kept having to evaluate it, their choices. And what was amazing, as Jared just pointed out, that I think tied for 5th was the idea that the government should guarantee a job at a living wage for everybody. I mean, think about that. People hate the government, right? That was tied for 5th. And the idea that any large corporation that gets taxpayer money shouldn't be laying off taxpayers involuntarily, a proposal they never heard of because nobody has heard of it, that tied for 5th. So my hat goes off to Jared. He did a spectacular job on the technical aspects of this study as well as the substantive aspects. But he really came up with some ways to push these ideas around, put them under pressure, make people make choices. And it wasn't just, a kumbaya poll where, we find out the same things we always find out. We found out new stuff. So I feel very good about that. I'm going to thank Jared for really doing the heavy lifting on that.
Jared, I wanted you to explain a little bit about how people reacted to what you called strong populist messaging versus weak populist messaging. And here's the exact wording that you have in the report for strong populist messaging. It's just plain wrong that hardworking families are struggling to keep up while big corporations get massive tax breaks and then turn around and lay off American workers. We shouldn't reward companies that cut American jobs just to boost profits. Instead, we should make sure everyone has a fair shot at the American dream. That's strong populist messaging versus weaker populist messaging, and that's and here's the wording for weak populist messaging. Most businesses are creating jobs and playing by the rules, but some aren't, and that's just not right. We shouldn't be allowing companies to engage in price gouging or boosting prescription drug prices just to increase profits. Instead, we should make sure everyone has a fair shot at the American dream. And if I'm remembering correctly, what you found is that the stronger populist messaging, dispensing with the niceties of like, some of the businesses are so nice and I love them so much. And I love small businesses and I love big businesses if they're playing by the rules. It's just the bad ones, cutting right to the quick and saying, like there's a problem here and we got to fix it. That seems to be received better. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that second message that you read, the what we call the soft or weak populism, was almost verbatim Kamala Harris 2024 messaging, and that was among the best messaging that she had, by the way. And we're not even saying that that's bad messaging. I mean, that's better than the vast majority of messaging that the Democrats are putting out. Especially the Harris campaign in 2024, at least it's focused on calling out, corporations to some degree. At least it's focused on, bread and butter issues and on workers issues. But it doesn't tap into that anger and the real and the fact that workers are just pissed off that they're just being thrown around and treated like a plaything of the rich and corporations. And so that's why when we added that additional language, and we're doing another survey now where we're trying to make it even more strong, to sort of like tap into the visceral anger that people feel. It turns out that resonates more than the kind of, I don't want to say milquetoast, but milquetoast, populist messaging that, many Democrats use. So it's not just as many sort of third way or, blue dog Democrats are going to be telling us more and more over the coming months and years. Populism's good, but, don't go too far. Like everybody wants to be a billionaire. So, don't hate on the billionaires. Like, da 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 da. No. People do care about business creation and job and economic growth, and even small businesses. Working class people have a very favorable view of small businesses. But what they don't have a favorable view of is elites that completely behind our backs rig our economic system and screw over our kids and our futures. And that's what the largest corporations that pay no taxes and that are accountable to no one are doing. And making them the villain and the enemy is good politics, and I think it can also lead to good policy in the end. So that's what our survey found, and that's something that is not a view that you're going to hear among a lot of pollsters who often have these ideas, just like you said, Jacob, that it's okay to be a little bit critical, but you don't want to go too far, because people have this association and personal connection in some way or aspiration to be billionaires. That's not something that we think is borne out by the messaging that we've tested.
And how has that message been received by Democrats? Jared, you've actually, you in particular, I think, have kind of traveled far with this message. You were on the Ezra Klein show a while back, and so how did Ezra Klein respond to this, and how have other people, in the kind of mainstream Democratic milieu taken these results? I mean, do you think that they're taking it in good faith and under advisement, or are they kind of disregarding it and saying, well, that's nice that you did this, but we're going to keep playing nice with the billionaires?
Well, I mean, many folks, including Ezra Klein, I think in the mainstream of the Democratic Party, are hearing some version of our message. And I think that that's a positive thing. And in fact, there's been a couple of other reports that were, doing similar types of things to ours put out by more mainstream Democratic orgs, particularly this one by the Welcome Party or whatever it's called. They called Deciding to Win, and they're finding pretty similar what are in the same ballpark as what we're talking about, which is that you can't just ignore the fact that working class people feel like really alienated by the Democrats. They feel like elites are screwing them over, and we need to tap into this populism to some degree. And I think that's the response that I've gotten from many, from some of the more mainstream Democrats that I've been in contact with in congressional offices, and I think, like I said, that's positive. On the other hand, we need to do as sort of the sort of committed progressive economic populists that Les and I and our organizations are, we need to do a lot to show that it's not just that weak populism that matters, right? It's not just using, and I think that that's the message that's not getting through yet, is that it's not just a matter of adding a few, mentions of workers and saying the phrase price gouging. It's actually something that's much stronger than that, and it's something that's it taps into a kind of authenticity or like I said, visceral, connection to the anger that working class people feel, and that goes far beyond some of the better but still pretty weak forms of populism that we're seeing from mainstream Democrats. So short answer, yes, I've gotten positive responses from mainstream Democrats based on some of the findings around economic populism in this report, and I find that to be quite promising. But I think that unfortunately there's a high likelihood that most, certainly not all, but most Democrats that are positively inclined toward this kind of messaging are going to move it more in the kind of Clinton 2.0 direction of kind of talk a little bit about populism, but not really go after, the true culprits that are rigging our economic system on the one hand, and on the other hand, not offering robust progressive economic solutions that can actually fix the problems that working class people face today.
There's another dimension to this as well. And it showed up, I think, with Ezra Klein, which is there's a suspicion, a fear that underneath it all, a lot of the working class, in fact, is deplorable on race, gender, xenophobia. Ezra Klein brought up this ad that Dan Osborne did that sounded pretty anti-immigrant. However, what he didn't bring up was the interview with the TV station the next day, where Osborne says, "Whoa, wait a second. I'm for a strong border, but I'm for a path for legalization of hardworking immigrants that are already here, that aren't criminals, et cetera." And he went on and on about how many vacant jobs there are in Nebraska and how immigrants are our brothers and sisters and neighbors. But I think that message is being resisted by the Democratic Party, along with strong populism. In fact, we tested this again in the survey. We asked how many of these voters supported the idea of a path to citizenship for any undocumented worker and we use the word illegal because that's the word that had been used previously in surveys, who have been here 3 years, paid their taxes, and not committed a felony crime. The answer was 63%. For my last book, I did this also from 2010 to 2020 with white working class voters, and it was also 63%. So there's a strong support for these people aren't Neanderthals, and Jared's operation did an incredible study. What was it, 120 different social issues, and working class people are getting more and more liberal. They're just not as liberal as upper middle class Democrats and on social issues. But so there's this weird suspicion, and I think that's what holds them back. They're afraid if they fan the flames of populism, they're fanning the flames of racism.
Well, Les, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Because I have seen some people kind of using your report in the same breath as they use other reports, which focus less on economic populism as a way to kind of code more centrist and focusing on coding more centrist, particularly on social issues. And they say that the key to winning in the Rust Belt or in overwhelmingly Republican areas is to adopt very socially conservative or even reactionary views on immigration, LGBT issues, and things like that. And so I'm glad that you brought up that there's strong support for what you call an Independent Workers Political Association, IWPA. and if you don't attach any social issues to it, you had 5 economic proposals that the proposed IWPA would support. Do you support it? Yes or no? And it had overwhelming support, even when you tacked on a pretty liberal immigration policy to that. It maintained strong majority support. So I thought that was interesting. But nevertheless, you did say, you did mention that the working class, or a lot of the working class by and large, is a little bit less socially liberal than maybe some upper middle class conservative or upper middle class Democrats. And so I wonder how, political parties, candidates, people who do messaging like our program should think about messaging on social issues versus economic issues. And, does that mean that the hard political answers that we have to, throw marginalized communities under the bus, or is there maybe a third way?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Les.
No, well, the way I see it is, I don't think it's all that complicated. And I think Bernie has understood this for a while. We have strong agreement amongst working people and others on a very, very powerful progressive economic populist platform. And I would argue, we just need to respect the diversity of opinion within the working class. Mm-hmm. People are, hey, look, some of Jared and I, good friends, are uncomfortable with a strong anti-abortion plank, or a pro-abortion plank. They're brought up Catholic and they just feel that way. Can't we respect the diversity of opinion without, like Bernie says, look, I believe a woman has a right to choose. Someone disagrees with me. What am I going to do? Throw them out of the movement? And I think understanding what the core of solidarity is, for example, in a union, trade union, you've got a lot of solidarity around, obviously, the economic issues and the reason for having a union, but you also have this incredibly strong anti-discriminatory clause in every union contract. And no union person really wants to see any form of discrimination at work. They just don't, because they know it could come bite them. So there's a strong, there shall be no discrimination based on race, gender, national origin, et cetera, et cetera. It's in every union contract. That's a good plank for a working class platform. And then just respect that, like guns. What, are you going to have unanimity on gun control? You're not going to have unanimity. You have to respect the diversity of working class opinion. And I think you can go a long way with that. But you've got to have what Jared has been pointing out for I don't know how many years now. You've got to have a foundation of progressive, strong progressive populism, not lightweight populism. That will bring people together. And then that will allow you at least to have discussions on a whole range of social justice issues, but you have to have a glue for solidarity.
Jared, I think that you had something that you wanted to add, or did Les cover that?
Yeah, no, that was very eloquently said. I mean, I just would add that the way that candidates are going to deal with these sorts of issues, they vary a lot depending on the setting, and as long as candidates are committed to the core principles, like Les was saying, of solidarity and anti-discrimination, there's a lot of different ways, number one, that you can reach people around these issues in terms of the type of messaging that you use, which sometimes on the progressive side is more judgmental and scolding rather than, inviting and tapping into values that working class people care about and that are important to them. So that you talk about immigration and you talk about, family and hard work and tradition, rather than in bringing people in around those shared values, rather than scolding them for, not sharing a view on a particular issue. You're going to get a lot farther if you work in those terms than in the sort of more judgmental terms. And then also the particular tactics or issues that you highlight or focus on in a given political campaign or in a given period in time around whatever broad issue you're addressing are going to vary, and they're going to have to be ones that are negotiated. But there are many different ways to hold on to a core progressive set of values and policies without alienating a huge amount of working class people, and with in order to build a much larger coalition. And the one that Les made about or talked about with immigration is a great example. Like, is the path to citizenship for people who've been here for 3 years and paid their taxes and haven't gone to jail or whatever, is that the most progressive position that you can imagine? Obviously not. But is it a progressive position? Obviously it is. And so those are the sorts of decisions and negotiations that people are going to have to make. And it's not like Les said, it's not rocket science. There are politicians that are currently doing this and doing it relatively well. And it's not a matter of either having the most extreme progressive position or throwing people under the bus. It's finding the right way to reach people that builds our tents while also holding on to our core values.
And so, Jared, what do you think that the results of the November elections and the December election last week in Tennessee say about your study?
Well, I mean, I don't think they are super informative because the electorate that came out on in November in those states and last week in Tennessee, is demographically quite different than the electorate that's going to come out next year or that's going to come out in 2028. I will say, I mean, it's obviously from a progressive standpoint encouraging that not only that the Democrats prevailed in these gubernatorial races and in all these school board races across the country and many of the down ballot races in other in legislature, everything else. But and it's great that they performed better than expected as well, and that it's in many of these say Latino or Hispanic areas that sort of moved heavily toward Trump in 2024, that in 2025 many of them have moved back toward the Democrats in a pretty substantial way, largely around, it seems, the anger that they feel around the same thing that led them to vote for Trump in the first place, which is affordability and rising costs. And so that's all encouraging. But I do not think that the takeaway from any of that is, okay, now the Democrats don't have a working class problem anymore. And, as long as they just keep going after, all the bad things that Trump's doing, and they don't need to offer a real economic populist alternative. They don't need to actually continue the process of thinking very critically about how to build a much stronger and broader working class base. That none of that has changed. It just means that we can feel at least a little bit more optimistic that the midterms are going to go well for Democrats. Although if you look historically, the position that the Democrats are in 2025 and the successes that they had are basically in line with other midterms of performances by the out party going back a decade or two. And the Tennessee race, that's an interesting one. It's really impressive that that Afton did as well as she did in a what is it, like an R+20 district or something like that?
24, I think.
24. That's really encouraging. To what extent people are going to pick at, was her, views on cultural issues or whatever, social issues, how much of an issue did that have? I can't speak to that. I don't know. I mean, that's like a lot of speculation there. But I think it is clear that, she shows that even somebody as progressive as her on cultural and social issues, put up a pretty good showing. And it gives us additional hope that candidates in similar places can do well and not just be competitive but also win.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey, so I was watching the Mikey Sherrill race. Actually, she lives in the same town, and I can assure you she's no radical populist.
But she sounded great, though.
Yeah, and I think that what I spotted was the counties that had the most Latino voters were the counties that switched the most towards the Democrats. Her landslide, I think, is almost entirely found in Hudson County, Passaic County, the places that really have large Latino votes. And I think it's because I think Trump has made an enormous mistake by rounding up just about anybody. I don't know if you've seen the recent articles that show what a small percentage of the people that they're rounding up, that ICE is rounding up, only a small percentage are criminals, and the rest are just, hardworking immigrants. That has really scared the Latino community, because that means anybody walking down the street can get stopped. These are relatives, these are neighbors, they may even be, close family members who are undocumented. I think basically they've made an enormous mistake. And where there are large Latino populations, I expect, like in congressional districts along the border, southern border, I think the Democrats are going to do a lot better. But any place where they're large, where ICE has been screwing around, is going to hurt the Republicans.
Right. Les Leopold is the executive director of the Labor Institute. Jared Abbott is a researcher at the Center for Working Class Politics. Jared, Les, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with before we let you go?
Yeah, follow me on Substack. I need as many people as possible. And I write about all these things and Jared inspires me to write about more stuff. And we're going to hopefully do a new survey next year that will build on the independent working class politics side of this.
Yeah, check us out on Center for Working Class Politics on Substack as well. And we have a number of reports coming out over the next 6 months that speak to all these issues in new and hopefully interesting ways. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Thanks so much, Al. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. We've got one more segment that we have for you today before we wrap up. If you want to give us a call, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. It's 844-899-8557.
Really appreciated that. Really appreciated that. It was, it's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to actually hear from the folks who worked on it and did it. So I think there's a lot to chew on there, and it's something that I'm sharing with all the political minds I know in Alabama. That's for sure.
So if you are, if you're living in the United States, the affordability thing has been a big topic of conversation. And along with the affordability thing, there's been also kind of a discussion about the decline in quality of goods and services in the United States. And More Perfect Union did a video about that about a month ago that was really good. And Matt Walsh, I think almost certainly it seems, if you look at the timing of the videos, it looks like he was inspired by this More Perfect Union video. He did actually clip the More Perfect Union video and use it in his own video. He has been inspired to undertake what he is calling a 6-month-long mission that he's going to be embarking on to identify the cause of why everything is worse now. I thought that's interesting. Matt Walsh, conservative talk radio guy, works for the Daily Wire. But he does hasten in his first video about his new mission. In his first video about his new mission, he hastens to explain what the problem is not. Let's play clip 1.
Something is causing the quality of prepared food to decline in a very noticeable and frankly kind of disgusting fashion. So what is it? And this is a question that matters, and not just because it's annoying that every chain restaurant in the country serves inedible slop. It matters because most Americans have a general sense that the general quality of everything has declined across the board. And as quality declines, quality of life declines. So why is that happening? I mean, what is going on? Is it even true that it's actually happening, or are we all just being nostalgic do we have rose-colored glasses about the past? Well, it is true, and so we're going to focus just on the issue of restaurants here. The very first answer that you'll hear if you ask around on social media, they'll say, of course, capitalism is the culprit. Specifically, it's the private equity companies who are purchasing beloved brands and then slowly strip mining them to extract every last dollar of available profit until nothing is left. And therefore, we need to abolish the banks and all the investment companies and the concept of money itself and immediately adopt socialism. Because in socialist countries, they have really good food. They're known for that. That's kind of the consensus at this point. But There are a couple of problems with the consensus. First of all, the decline I'm talking about is a relatively recent phenomenon, but we've had capitalism in this country for a long time, as you may have noticed, and private equity is nothing new either.
So that is a very funny thing to start your journey with, right? I mean, literally within the first 100 seconds of the first video that he makes about this new mission that he has to uncover the cause of why everything sucks more now. Within the first 100 seconds, he's like, gotta make sure, guys, it's not capitalism. It's not the capitalists. It's not the bosses. It's not private equity. You know, there's no reason to be looking at the system. No reason to be analyzing it systematically. We got to make sure we're not doing that. I'm going to be looking for everything outside of that. And so he goes on for a little bit more about private equity and really seems to be, making the case that actually private equity seems to be uniquely problematic as it relates to the quality of goods and services. And yet, he sticks to his guns that private equity is not a problem. Let's play clip 2.
I think sometimes comics and graphic novels get pigeonholed. And I think sometimes when we hear comics, we kind of think, oh, that's superheroes, that's kid stuff.
What?
And it is true.
Private equity companies and major corporations are not going to intentionally destroy their own investments, just from a business standpoint that makes no sense. But they are doing their best to degrade quality as low as it can possibly go before too many consumers notice and flee the brand. They don't want to destroy the business. They just want to sell more. They want to make more money. The problem is that that's all they care about, is just making more money. They don't care about the quality of the product.
And so there you go. Private equity companies don't care about the quality of the product. They want to lower the quality as low as it can go before consumers flee the brand. It seems like that is seems like that's a problem with private equity, but he has already hastened to explain to us why that is not actually the problem. That's private equity companies, not actually the problem. And so what is the real problem? And he gives us at least one of the things that he thinks is the real problem in clip 3. Let's play that one.
Now, another factor which isn't talked about nearly enough is that the people who are working in fast food restaurants like Jimmy John's usually are not high school students anymore. That used to be
okay. So pause for a second there.
Now it's not a first job for kids who are eager to work for their first paycheck. Increasingly, these jobs are
and let's back up a little bit so that we can hear the rest of that again. One of the reasons that restaurants are worse now is because there's not as many teenagers working as there used to be. I mean,
is that right?
That's a fascinating theory about why services have declined, because we are not using enough child labor. The children are just better at their jobs apparently than the adults who now work in the restaurant industry. That's an interesting theory. That's almost all I have to say about it. Let's continue.
It's not a first job for kids who are eager to work for their first paycheck. Increasingly, these jobs are occupied by adult drug addicts. Now, ask anyone in the industry, and they'll tell you the same thing. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, 20% of food service workers reported using illegal drugs within the past month. 17% have a substance abuse disorder. 12% reported binge drinking in the past month. So we're not talking about someone who, smokes a blunt every now and then, which you shouldn't do that either, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about hardcore drug abusers. And these numbers have gotten much worse in recent years post-COVID. According to Quest Diagnostics, quote, substance abuse soared last year among restaurant and hotel employees, with the proportion of workers failing drug tests jumping to 12.9%. Marijuana use increased sharply with 17.3%. More hospitality workers testing positive for THC. Now, not that it really needs to be said, but when your fast food worker or line cook is high and drunk, he's probably not going to produce the highest quality sandwich. And that's what we're getting. Now, in the early 1980s, something like 60% of teenagers were employed and they were doing these kinds of jobs. Now that number is under 35%. What's happened is that, especially with the surge in foreign migration into this country, much of it illegal, young people are being pushed out of the workforce. They're being replaced by, migrants, drug addicts, and the restaurant's owners will happily hire them because they're probably not going to leave for college anytime soon. And frankly, the restaurant may not have a better option anyway. And as long as they can, get over the very low bar to just churn out the slop, that's all that matters. Keeps the money coming in.
So we've identified not private equity, not capitalism as the problem. The workers are the problem, specifically the fact that there are fewer children working for restaurants now, and that the people who are there are increasingly addicted to drugs and increasingly undocumented immigrants. And that is an interesting theory. There is absolutely no data to support this. You
mean they haven't done a report to show the work ethics of teenagers measured against these other people? That's interesting. Wonder where he came up with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting theory, and if you actually wanted to test that, then what you would have to do is you would have to go out and do a study, or at least do a survey of the when restaurant just like the Columbia Labor Lab did with prison labor and Hyundai. They had a hypothesis that prison labor is decreasing the wages of free labor in the Hyundai-Kia supply chain. So they went out and tested that hypothesis and by seeing, is there a correlation between Is there at least a correlation? And then you have to decide if that's a causation. Is there a correlation between the percentage of prison workers in a manufacturing plant and the, and the wages of free workers? And it turns out there is, actually. The more prison workers you have in a manufacturing plant, the lower the wages are for free world workers. And so you have to have some sort of evidence like that, at least anecdotally, is it the case that restaurants who have more children working for them have better products? Is it the case that restaurants who have, more undocumented immigrants working for them have worse products? Those are things that you have to kind of test and figure out, right? And there's none of that. There's zero evidence for that. A repeated insistence. It's not capitalism. It's not private equity. Instead,
it's not the bosses who are hiring these people he doesn't like. Right, to Gus's point in the chat, it's immigrants and
children for not working there. Somehow the children aren't even involved anymore, and it's still their problem. And he also doesn't ask questions about why is it that substance abuse rate is increasing in restaurants, and I don't doubt necessarily that it's increasing among restaurant workers. The reason that restaurants are not able to, either help their workers get on a better path, get to sobriety, or hire people that are not addicted to drugs. And, I would not dispute the fact that people who are addicted to drugs tend to be worse employees than people who are not addicted to drugs. I don't think that's in dispute. But the reason that these restaurants are not able to either bring their employees into sobriety or hire non-addicted employees, in the cases where they have addicted employees, is because they don't pay enough. And he says that specifically. He was like, and sometimes they have no better options. Why do they have no better options? They have no better options because they pay poverty wages, right? That's the reason. But because of his, tunnel vision and his refusal to critique bosses and capitalists and owners, we can't look at that, and we have to say that no, it's the workers who are responsible for the conditions that they find themselves in every situation. And we don't look at the people who actually control the budgets of the restaurants or things like that. It's so frustrating, and it's literally exactly the sort of parable archetypical example of a conservative pointing at a problem that you have and that you viscerally identify with, and taking you away from the intuitive recipient of your anger, which would be, if you have a problem with restaurants, who is like the obvious person to be pissed off at? It's the bosses. It's the owner of the restaurant, particularly when it's these big national chains that are the focus of his ire. The obvious person to be mad at are the CEOs, are the corporate class, right? And so how do we make sure that you're not mad at them, or not mad at them in a way that threatens the system? We have to take that anger and point it at something else. And the something else that we're going to point it at is addicted workers, is immigrants, is children for not working enough. It's absurd. And, I hope that's like visible to people as we watch this. And so one of the things that he talks about in there is Cisco, and he clips part of the same clip that we have from the More Perfect Union video, talking about Cisco and identifying Cisco as, as like a key player in the destruction of quality in restaurants, even as he says, there's no bigger kind of systemic problems. But he does talk about Cisco. And so I wanted to play for you the More Perfect Union video explaining what Cisco is. Let's play clip 4.
The innovation of Cisco was that it was the first national company to essentially offer everything a restaurant needs.
Back in the day, someone like Ellen might have one distributor for butter and another for eggs. But Cisco is what's called a broadliner, supplying
everything from paper products to meat and produce.
Cisco was a merger of 9 different wholesale restaurant distributors with kind of the explicit goal of making a national player.
That was in 1969. Fast forward to today, and Cisco has grown so much that it really only has 2 other competitors in the national space. Among them, Cisco is the largest, and even a decade ago, controlled an estimated 35% of the market. And this year, their gross profit hit $15 billion.
The scary thing about Cisco was it didn't become this giant through organic growth, but instead it became a giant through relentless acquisitions that went unchecked.
They've acquired over 150 companies to become really one of the only national broadline distributors for restaurants.
And so, they've explained what Cisco is, and they talked a little bit about how it got there. And here's a little bit more from this More Perfect Union video about how Cisco has been able to create for itself such a dominant position in the restaurant and food service industry by acquiring other companies, by exploiting workers, and by potentially degrading the quality of the products that it has. Let's play clip 5.
Cisco, on the other hand, operates with the biggest producers at massive scales to eke out savings. Producers that often have some of the most exploitative production models. Cisco gets their berries from companies like Driscoll.
Driscoll's basically took the Nike sweatshop model and applied it to berry production.
And chicken from companies like Tyson.
Tyson's applied a sharecropping model to meat production.
Cisco scours the globe for a good deal, and there's reason to be concerned about how they're getting some of those deals.
Seafood is the best example of this. Many providers to Cisco have been accused of engaging in slave labor.
That includes forced Uyghur and North Korean labor in China.
Basically, any dark part of the food system has moved offshore, which makes policing it really, really hard to do.
But Cisco doesn't just source shrimp and strawberries. They have their own line of mass-manufactured frozen foods. Everything from sourdough and brioche to, I learned from researching this, jalapeno poppers, other fried appetizers, and desserts. Frozen food, it turns out, isn't just a facet of the Cisco business model, it drives it.
I don't think Americans appreciate that frozen food allows these long exploitative supply chains.
In the early 2000s, Cisco was buying jalapeno poppers assembled in Mexico for well below minimum wage and shipped frozen all over the country.
It allows a race to the bottom in terms of labor standards and pay.
So the food we ordered could have come to a distribution center like this, frozen, shipped to restaurants across the country, and then dumped into a fryer. And now, the truckers driving those shipments, they're also getting squeezed by Cisco.
Cisco's continuously lobbying year after year to deregulate the trucking industry. And what we've seen since the 1980s is trucking wages are down nearly 40%.
The system isn't exactly working out for restaurant owners or local distributors either. With the competition bought out, Cisco has more leverage to arbitrarily raise prices. During COVID, for instance, they used their market power to pass on inflation to their customers and increase their earnings by 159%. Cisco CEO even said on an earnings call that they had no intention of competing on price.
Smaller restaurants have almost no negotiating power with Cisco. And so if you are in a rural area where there, aren't any other distributors, then restaurants really don't have many options at all. As we've lost some of that regional wholesale infrastructure, we also see the loss of local businesses, local farms, and a regional food system.
And so there you're seeing that even if you're a free market guy or a capitalist, and you believe in the power of markets, I believe in the power of markets. I think that markets have like a real value, and they can, and in some instances, markets can be better than planning, right? And so you don't have to be like a socialist or completely plan guy to recognize that there are market distortions happening here that can only be addressed not through, or that can be most effectively addressed not through kind of individual consumer decisions, but by policy changes, because it is a result of our laws that Cisco is able to profit from slave labor. It is a result of our laws that Cisco is able to acquire all of their competitors. We don't have to allow them to acquire their competitors. We could just say you can't do that. And actually, if we did that, then we would have more competition, right? And so there are things that you can do, and we'll play some of the solutions that More Perfect Union proposes in their video in a second. But first, let's play Matt Walsh's solution. Let's play clip 6.
Well, the only explanation that makes sense is that from the customer service reps behind the counter all the way up to the ownership, from at every level now, when you go to these places, there is not anybody involved at any level who cares what the food tastes like. The CEO doesn't care. If a private equity firm owns the place, they don't really care about the quality of the food. The employees who are coming in, most of them, they don't care. And in a lot of cases, the customers don't care either, because they keep eating it. They're keeping these companies in business by purchasing their slop.
Let's pause it for just a second. And, have
you ever considered, what if it's your fault?
What if it's your fault that everything's worse, actually? It's your fault, and there's nothing else to be done about it other than kind of blaming yourself as an individual for these huge, macro trends in our economy. Let's continue.
And this part of the story is indeed a new phenomenon. In the recent past, women like Julie Fells-Massino were not put in charge of businesses they didn't understand. They weren't given the opportunity to destroy brands like Budweiser or Cracker Barrel. But that's changed now.
Pause that for just a second again. And see, this is what I was, and there was some other stuff that he said in there.
He's going to find a way to make this about DEI, isn't he?
Exactly. Yes, and he has. He has made it about DEI. It's not because it's not her position as a representative of capital that she is making all of these decisions that decrease costs, decrease quality, and increase suck, right? It's not that she's not doing that because she's a capitalist. She's doing that because she's a dumb woman. Obviously, a man wouldn't have made these decisions, right? Even though, no doubt, the board of Cracker Barrel is full of men who also signed off on this decision. But we're gonna point the blame at this woman, and even though a bunch of these other companies that he looks at have male CEOs, it's not like only women CEO businesses make worse products. It's a silly thing to believe, but he wants you to believe that so that your anger and your actions are not pointed at real solutions that can actually challenge the power of these companies and the bosses. Instead, he just wants it to undermine women and immigrants and minorities. Let's continue.
Are now rising to the highest levels of the food industry solely because of their gender. And meanwhile, millions of people have been badgered by the media, by the HR departments, by declining standards of living into accepting mediocrity. That's why everybody can sense that our general quality of life is declining in seemingly small ways all over the place. It adds up. You know, your sandwich is garbage for the same reason that most streaming shows are garbage, which is the same reason most universities are garbage, and so on and so on and so on. People who tolerate mediocrity are keeping these restaurants and private equity companies in business. They're paying the salaries of the CEO of Cracker Barrel, and they're making Cisco the largest distributor of food in the world. We're doing this for no discernible reason, by the way. I'm just as guilty. But I don't need a sandwich from Subway or from Jimmy John's. Most of that you could do that at home for a fraction of the price. You can make a lot of this food now, you can make at home, and it will be better and cheaper. So we don't need to abolish capitalism to stop this long-standing, humiliating decay. We can adopt some standards. We can stop wasting our money in exchange for slop from Subway, which is owned by the same private equity company as about a dozen other brands. We can choose to withhold our money until we get quality in return. It's actually not anywhere near as difficult as it sounds. Yes, private equity companies and CEOs and big conglomerates, they want your money. But if you want restaurants to be worth the trip, and if you want your pizza to taste somewhat distinct from every other pizza, then for the foreseeable future, your only option is to withhold it.
So there you go. Just be a better consumer, and then everything will be better, and there won't be any more problems. What do you think about that prescription, Adam?
I mean, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Interesting. But I thought boycotts were like too woke. I mean, that sounds eerily close to a boycott. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's just absolutely wild, the kind of stuff that people can put out there. And just, get you mad about stuff that has nothing to do with your original issue. You're pissed off about a sandwich not being great, and you're supposed to be mad at women in the workforce? Give me a break.
Yeah. And so I don't want to leave you without any solutions to this problem, because there are some solutions to this problem. And, to be fair to him, he's right that we have had capitalism in this country for hundreds of years, and we haven't had this problem with, the quality of products as ubiquitously as we seem to do now.
But the financialization of everything
exactly.
over the last 50 years is a real trend, dude.
The monopolization, financialization, nationalization, not in terms of the government owning, but the things losing their regional characteristics. Those are all new phenomenons, and there are ways to address that. Let's play clip 7 from the More Perfect Union video.
The most aggressive, gold standard thing that an antitrust enforcer could do would be to look at some of these deals and say, maybe we went too far. Like, maybe we let Cisco acquire too many companies, and we should unwind some of those and break up Cisco. That's something that we've seen antitrust enforcers take on with past deals like Ticketmaster.
The FTC could also block future acquisitions, and states and federal regulators could scrutinize discount programs that people like Claire and Austin suspect Cisco is using to drive out the competition.
So there you go. There are actual policy solutions to this, rather than the wimpy, just be a better consumer sort of thing.
And the punching down.
Yeah. We've got a caller on the line, caller from a 313 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. If you want to get where this person is, you can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. 313 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, it's Dylan calling from Detroit. I'm a Teamster steward, and Real quick, I just wanted to comment on that last segment you were doing. I think what the obvious solution is, because everybody knows drug addicts and undocumented immigrants are the best workers. We need teenage undocumented drug addicted workers.
True.
Don't tell Hyundai-Kia supply chain that.
Yeah.
They are always searching for the bottom, so don't give them any wild ideas.
No, but I was calling to kind of talk about some of the earlier segments in the show and kind of tie that into what you guys were talking about. I think on the last episode about TDU endorsing Sean O'Brien again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty new in the Teamsters. I just became a member earlier this year, and I was kind of trying to play some catch up with where the union's at politically. And at first, I was very, very adamant about getting O'Brien out and getting somebody that shares my values a lot more as far as how he's conducted himself with the current administration.
Mm-hmm.
But after hearing you guys break down that labor notes report and kind of what the earlier segments were about with the populism and coalition building, I understand it a lot more. Like at the end of the day, like a material analysis would show that, like, the results speak for themselves. Like, even though the Teamsters are a pretty reactionary union, like ultimately, at least my local has had a lot of freedom to fight for way better contracts, way better strike funds. So the first segment you guys were talking about today with the Tennessee Valley Authority, I dropped a note in the comments about there's a ballot initiative going around Michigan right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I've been pretty passionate about because of that coalition building aspect. Like,
right.
No matter who you talk to, any working person absolutely hates our energy company. It's something that you can really get a lot of people to rally around.
That's right. And, I'll just jump in real quick to say, like, once you've had those good conversations, you can have other conversations about maybe more difficult subjects where there is some friction or disagreement, right? But you've already found common ground. And, that helps pave the way, I think, for broader agreement. And, like, you're not going to get everybody on every issue, but, where you find the common ground, you can build some relationships and rapport with folks. And, like, even if you do agree to disagree on certain things, they can kind of respect where you're coming from and know that you're fighting for the people. And I think that's really important to find those issues. And we found the same with the Tennessee Valley Authority here locally being a really good rallying point, for environmentalists and building trades union members and other folks who aren't always necessarily on alignment with everything, but we all want to keep our TVA. We all want to keep the public power system. We want those to be good jobs. We want to protect our environment. We don't want anything to get worse, for sure. And then we can talk about also ways we can, have things in common about how it could be better. So, I really appreciate you bringing that point up.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of speak to what the title of the episode is on YouTube, like at least in my view, that coalition has to come first before we can, totally ditch the Democratic Party, like that broad working class coalition. And like this is where that starts with doing work like that, and maybe if you call it capitulating a little bit to a guy like O'Brien who wants to rub elbows with Trump is kind of maybe a necessary thing in the now, but in the long term, building that strong union power.
You mentioned that that you're a new Teamster and you were like really adamant about getting Sean O'Brien out initially, and now you're a little bit softer on it. I don't think you said particularly one way or another if you are in a place where you're actually supporting O'Brien at this point, or if you're just fine with other people supporting O'Brien. I'm interested in that question, and you don't have to answer it if you'd rather not. But then after that question, I'm also interested in like where your members are, where your other members are, particularly the ones who have more, liberal or democratic politics. How are they receiving Sean O'Brien's like political antics?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, because of the guys that I've kind of became friends with down at the local, going to meetings and stuff, there seems to be a real center moderate, center right type of feel to a lot of the guys I met, even some of the more liberal guys. A good friend of mine, we went to Abdul Al-Sayed rallies together, guy that's running for Senate over here. He's probably the most progressive candidate in the race. And he still thinks it's very, what Sean O'Brien is doing is just very cunning political maneuvering. That's kind of how he's rationalizing that, of, trying to, I don't know, maybe bait Trump into laying off the Teamsters, or actually get some concessions from Trump by rubbing shoulders with him. But no, I do know that a lot of members in my area are pretty conservative. And there's a quote in that Labor Notes article about a guy who said just that, like, most of my coworkers are Trump supporters, and I don't want to have be getting into these political fights with them over that issue when Sean O'Brien's producing results. So to answer the other part of your question, where do I stand on him? I'm not sure if I'm going to put in any actual footwork, like campaigning for the guy. But if that's something that my local decides to do, we do have a pretty solid executive board, from what it seems, who are pretty outspoken against Trump and the policies that he's been putting in against the NLRB. If that's something my local decides that they want to rally around, so be it. Like, that's the whole point of collectivism, collective democracy in the union like that. Like, I'm going to support my union no matter what. But I don't know if I will go out of my way to necessarily canvass for O'Brien.
Gotcha. Well, Dylan from Detroit, I appreciate your call.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really appreciate it. It's always cool to hear from folks outside the South who are tuning in, and also just to hear reports from people's locals, and like just, what's the vibe like, among the membership? What are people saying? It's really helpful to hear those reports from folks. So just want to encourage people, if you can't call in live, no worries. Give us a call during the week. Leave a voicemail. Give us a quick update. Like, hey, here's what's going on in my city or in my local, whether it's political or if it's more organizing, contract negotiations, whatever's going on. We like to hear these reports. It's really helpful. But also it's frankly, where else, there's not a lot of other platforms out there to get these kind of stories out there. So that's why we're doing this, and try to get working people's stories out.
We're at the end of the program. We do have a caller on the line. I want to bring him on. I think I know who it is, so I want to give him a chance. We do need to wrap it relatively quick. We've got a business meeting for TVLR at 2 that I have not done enough prep for, so I need to finish hammering out the agenda and the budget. But I want to let this caller on. So we got a caller from a 714 area code. Let's bring him on the air. 714 area code. I believe this is Jose. Jose, what's on your mind?
Buenos dias, buenos tardes to all the comrades out there, all my working class cohorts and siblings and union as well. As I've been saying this last couple months, we must continue to boycott Home Depot. I just saw that Home Depot, the New Orleans one, I don't know what part of New Orleans was targeted. Out here in Orange County, we had, Orange and LA County, we had 5 Home Depots targeted yesterday, and they went to the Westminster location 3 times. 3 times in that same day, they hit it up. I urge everybody to keep boycotting Home Depot. We have out here in Southern California, Unión del Barrio partnered with other organizations, created a coalition for community self-defense coalition, what goes out patrolling and protecting our neighborhoods from ICE and warning our working class communities if ICE or DHS or Border Patrol are nearby to stay at home, lock your doors. You know, they're doing good jobs. And then with that, we sprung out the Boycott Home Depot Coalition, and we had an event on Black Friday where we protested a Home Depot out here in the city of Torrance. Out here in Orange County, we have Laborers United Community Healing and Action, better known as Lucha, and some others too in LA. They have a self-defense hub inside the parking lot or very close to a Home Depot to protect the day laborers that are only seeking a job to provide for their families. All they want is dignity and respect. Now, we just had a caller talk about the Teamsters. You know, I am a Teamster. I am a Teamster. And this election, do you want a transactional union president that we have in office right now that takes photos with Kristi Noem? Kristi Noem, who goes out here in these streets and brings her 2 videographers to take images, to record videos, to upload it onto social media, so this nation keeps being divided. You know what I mean? Or do you want a union leader that is transformational? Because I want one that's transformative. I want something that's transformative. I don't need transactional. I need transformative. I need a labor union that's going to fight for me in the workplace, but also knows that they're going to have to fight for me out here in the community. You know, class struggle unionism. We don't. The workplace is vital, but also in our community. There's no separation. You know what I mean? And I know you gentlemen have to go, but let's continue to boycott Home Depot. Let's bring those fucking stock prices down. I saw it dip, but it's still in the 300s. Well, I want those shares to be pennies, like Wolf of Wall Street with what you call it, character Jared Belfort. I want people selling penny stocks and Home Depot being one of those penny stocks. Everybody have a great weekend. Please be out to protect your community. If you know immigrant communities, go out there. Please protect them. Let's show them that the working class is behind them, because they are part of the working class. Thank you very much. I'll take any comments off air. Thank you.
Appreciate the call, Jose. Thank you. I don't think I have any comments.
I just wanted to remind folks to go to labornotes.org/events. Check out the trainings. Always get more training. Appreciate the call, Jose and Dylan from Detroit. Always appreciate the phone calls. Enjoyed the show today. And make sure you're following us at the Valley Labor Report and spread the good word. Let people know about the program and let them call in and tell us what's going on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that's going to be it for us this week. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us, tuning in, and calling in. If you would like to leave us a message, phone number is 844-899-TVLR, or you can leave us a written message at tvlr.fm/contact. We'll see you next week.